What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Vanguard Project podcast. My name is Austin Jardine. Happy freaking Monday. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend and are ready to get after it this fine Monday. I know that last week for me, kind of on all fronts, felt a little chaotic. Just a lot of work, a lot of life, a lot of things going on. But you know what? We are back to reality, back down to square one, ready to get back after it. And you know, this past weekend was actually a lot of fun. I did a couple new things. I went to actually. Yeah, a couple. I actually went line dancing for the first time on Friday night, which I tell you what is way harder than it looks, and it is a whole hell of a lot of fun. I think that's something that I'm going to have to go spend some time on YouTube University learning how to do before I show my face out in public again doing that one. But I also did actually go to a cowboy quick draw match this past weekend, which it wasn't a quick draw. It was a cowboy action kind of three-gun shoot with the rifle, shotgun, and pistol. So it was a hoot. I emailed the guys, and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to just go see what it's about. Wouldn't mind getting into it, but I've never done it. I kind of just need something to do this weekend to get back into shooting because I phoned a friend, had a bit of a mental block this week, and phoned a friend, kind of figuring some stuff back out, getting back down to what makes me happy, and finding those friends out in Utah. So I went out and shot this through, or shot. I ended up participating. How do I say this? I went to go watch and ended up participating. And these guys are awesome. Shot a couple really cool 357 or 38 special lever actions, couple cool revolvers, some sweet shotguns, and I need some money, honestly, because I would like to get into that and have a good time. But holy hell, to get some nice Henry rifles is something else. But that's kind of beside the point. I'm just letting you all know that, you know what? Sometimes when you feel like your shit's getting kicked in, it's worth kind of level setting, calling somebody that you need to chat with, getting back on your horse, and go doing the things that you love. So, getting into today's episode, I'm really excited because I finally was able to pin Justin down. It was a bit of back and forth just between scheduling and trying to find the right time. I think we had chit-chat several times over the course of the summer, and finally we're able to lock a time down for us both that worked for us both. And I'm really excited because he shares some great information, and I'm really excited to get it out to y'all. And feel very fortunate to have sat down with a guy like Justin to share his story. So before we get into that, though, I am fortunate and blessed to have several show sponsors, one of which is Midwest Gunworks. I recently got a handful of parts from them delivered in lickety-split timing, which was really cool. And, you know, I am still kind of teetering on whether I want to get a red dot for this or get a scope of some sort, which, again, I can't decide if I want to do just like a Vortex Diamondback Tactical and go kill a bunch of coyotes with it, or if I want to get a Strike Eagle and use it for some more tactical and or three-gun shoots. I have no idea. So still trying to figure that out, but they have a phenomenal array of parts. Like, I struggled trying to decide what I wanted to build and kind of just went with what I knew for the most part. But you know what? They've got a ton of product, and if you use code Vanguard, you'll actually save 5% off your total purchase, which if you're building a new gun or trying to modify anything, 5% goes a long ways, right? I mean, building a new rifle or getting some 1911 parts or some Glock parts, I mean, some of them are cheap, but after a while, everything adds up. So if you're making a big purchase, use code Vanguard, save 5%. You won't regret it. And the shipping time, like I said, is spectacular as well. So I'm going to go ahead and digress. But again, code Vanguard, I'm not going to digress yet. Code Vanguard, Midwest Gunworks. I'm going to link their website in the episode description. Save you 5%. But I'm going to stop talking for reals this time. Let's roll an awesome episode with Mr. Justin of MilMak Blades. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Vanguard Project podcast. My name is Austin Jardine, and I'm excited because on the phone with me this morning is Mr. Justin Walker, and we have played a little bit of phone tag over the past couple of months because I know that we have both been insanely busy between work, moving, kind of the whole kit and caboodle. But I'm excited because I followed you for quite a while, and I'm a big fan of your blades. I've never actually played with one, but I've been on your website a handful of times, and I've seen them kind of pop up in and out and go go out of stock real quick, which means people love them too. So that's awesome. But dude, I'm excited. Kind of my goal, like we were talking about, is really just to get your story and kind of understand how MilMak Blades started and kind of some of the other things that you're working on, life lessons learned. But I don't really want to take your intro away. So I'm going to sip my coffee. And if you don't mind, maybe sharing a little bit about yourself. I've got a pen and pad here. I'm going to take some notes and I will ask questions as we go.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me, Austin. Yes, like you said, dude, my name is Justin Walker. Most important about me is I'm a husband and a father to two awesome kiddos. Retired police officer out of Phoenix and owner of MilMak Blades. My kids' names, I get asked a lot, like, where did MilMak come from? My kids' names are Miller and McKenna. So it's just the first three letters of each of their names. And that's kind of where that came from. But yeah, man, just turned 40, retired from the PD just this year. So a lot of life-changing stuff going on and really just, yeah, excited to talk, man. I feel like I like what you're doing with these things, with the podcast and everything else. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, I'm stoked, man. Congratulations, 40 and retiring. That's probably feels good. It's probably a big life change, right?
It is, man. It's a huge change, and it's for the good, man. It ended a little sooner than I expected for some medical stuff, but I'm blessed, dude. Yeah, like I'm in a great spot. So
That's good. More free time, right?
absolutely,
Allegedly.
yeah, yeah. More time to do what you want. Maybe not
That's
free.
fair. That's
To do what you
fair.
want.
Yeah, you always find ways to fill alleged free time. So, well, shoot, man. So part of kind of what we were talking about kind of before we started recording is kind of the story of things. It's kind of what the podcast is morphed into is kind of the storyline and how your life has progressed. Maybe to start, I mean, what has your whole career been in law enforcement? Did you start out in something else? Did you have a desire somewhere else other than law enforcement kind of growing up?
I did, man. So I never, I thought I was going to play pro football, right? Like every kid thinks they're going to be a professional athlete or whatever they thought they were going to be. Played some football in high school, played some football in college, ended up getting hurt, and that was kind of the end of that. So when that happened, man, I really didn't know what I was going to do. Ended up looking at the military, actually started going through that whole process. The injury from football required me to get a bunch of waivers and stuff at that time. And while I was going through that process, we had a family friend that had worked for Phoenix PD and said, "Hey, man, like, are you interested in just come do a ride along? Come check it out." So I went, checked it out, rode along with their SWAT team a couple times, and I was like, "This is a pretty cool gig, dude. Like, I could do this for a little bit until I figure out what I want to really do when I grow up, right?" So end up applying. I ended up getting hired by the PD prior to all, like, my medical stuff going through, my waivers and stuff on the military side. So I chose that route. Um, and that's kind of how my career in law enforcement started, man. I wasn't the guy that grew up always wanting to be a cop. Like, there was part of me that always was interested in that. Like, I loved old Western movies, man, watching the sheriffs and the Rangers do their thing. And I love that kind of thing. But I never really, like, thought about being a city cop, right? Like, that was not on the radar until kind of everything kind of happened and led me down that path. So yeah, man, I ended up going to the academy, graduating the academy, and went out on patrol as a young 20-year-old with a cop car and a pistol, and down in the southwest part of Phoenix.
That's funny. Okay. So a couple things kind of, so I'm taking some notes and I like the path that you took, right? Because I feel like to a certain extent, some folks might be able to relate and or maybe have questions coming out of it, right? So when you were in high school playing football, going into college and you got hurt. This is something that always interests me because that seems like it could be if you knew that you wanted to go pro football route, right? That could be a life-changing or life-altering event, right? Now, to you, or in your case, I think that that definitely qualifies as one, right? But how did you kind of say, okay, I'm hurt. Pro football is no longer a course of action for me. How did you not get stuck and kind of wallow, I guess you could say?
Yeah, man. So I would say I did for a little bit, right? Like, who knows if I would have been good enough? Um, I worked hard, man. Like I was good enough to play a little bit in college and whatnot, but I don't know where I would have ended up. Like I like to think if I didn't get hurt, then that's where what would have had it would have ended up. But also, just to be completely honest, man, I don't know if my head was completely in that on that route. I don't know if I was completely dedicated to that kind of goal onset. So I think when that happened, there was definitely some frustration because everything for so long had been geared towards that, right? Like
Hmm.
working out, like nutrition, like everything I did was really geared around football for a really long time at that young age. From what like my from time I was whatever 13, 14 till early 20s. So in that kind of when you get thrown a loop, it was kind of like shoot, man, like what do I do now? So I ended up just coming back here, going to school. My wife currently was my girlfriend at the time. Like we were high school sweethearts. So I think having that in place was a huge, huge help for me. Um, but dude, I did wallow, man. Like I had my um, pity parties and like, oh my gosh, what's life doing to me? Why is God doing this? What's happening? Like, He knows how bad I want this. What's going on? And you do, and I think you just for me, I just got to a point where like, hey, I can stay in this. And this has kind of been a constant theme of something I've always dealt with, man, because I had some hardships growing up when I was a little kid too. Like I can stay in that place and I can be there and I can be sad. And I can choose to always see the negative, or I can trust that things are going to work out. I can trust that I'm on the path I'm supposed to be on, and that echoes a lot more now at my age than it did when I was in my 20s for sure.
Okay, so I'm taking a quick note.
Yeah.
So, and that's interesting, right? So, is that I'm trying to process kind of on the fly as we talk about this, right? But being able to sit or being able to understand that you can stay in that place and stay in the negative is one thing. But then also being able to actively decide to understand and believe that things will work out is entirely different. Can I ask, how did you develop the ability to move out of sitting in the negative?
Um, so for me, I think it was just it was a learning process. I think when I was in the negative, like everything sucked, like everything was shitty. Like I'd be with my buddies hanging out, like should be having a great time, and I'm just like pissed and angry, and nothing was fun, right? Like I'd be with Amanda, my wife now, my girlfriend at the time, and it was just like, dude, like I'm wasting everything here, like because of one thing that has happened. Um, I'm choosing to make everything bad now because I think that was one of the things. Like I started to realize it was a choice. Like, hey, you can sit here and you can be pissy, you can be mad, you can be upset, you can feel like nothing works out for you. Um, but then you're just going to keep having the same outcome, right? Because you're not choosing anything different. Or I can choose to understand, um, or not even maybe understand. Maybe I didn't understand it. Maybe I can just choose to say, hey, like this is happening. I'm going through this spot in my life, but I can't let that control every moment. Like I'm on a date with my girlfriend, my future wife. Like have fun, enjoy what I'm doing right now, and be here, be present. Stop worrying about that stuff that you can't control.
Hmm. Okay. So then in the moment where you get injured through college, start to decide or think about maybe going to towards the military route. I mean, were you kind of actively making those decisions too based off of finding that next level of, I'm going to say, happiness, or was that just a next level of physical pursuit for you?
I would say it was both.
Hmm.
Like I think I had one of my roommates in college after I got hurt was in the military, and it was just something that interested me. And I had a couple other buddies from high school that had done it, and it was just it was something I felt like I could do. It was something that I knew I wanted to serve somehow. I just didn't know what that looked like, and really, that was kind of the only, um, or not the only, but the thing I had been most exposed to
Sure.
was that. Like my dad was in the military, my grandfather. So I knew that route, but I had really not thought a ton about it, honestly, to up until that point. So I figured, shoot, man, like I don't know what's going on. I feel like I'm a little bit on a lost path right now. Like maybe this interests me. I can go this route, and it can redirect the ship a little bit, and at least buy me some time, and I can figure out where I'm doing also while like serving my country, doing some things. And that was kind of where my head was with that decision. It was just something to kind of like, hey, dude, let's correct the ship a little bit.
Hmm. So did you have like an end goal in mind then to kind of help course correct that ship and that lost path? Or were you just trying to find something to fill the void more or less?
Dude, I think at that time, I don't think I did have an end goal, man. I think I was just trying to fill up space, honestly. Hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I know I'm graduating college soon, but I got to do something. So what's that going to be? Like, I know I don't want to sit at a desk. I know I don't want to, uh, like, be a lawyer, be a doctor. Like, I don't want to do those things, man. I want to be out. I want to be doing stuff. So what are my options? Okay, here's some options I know about. That sounds pretty cool. Let's go down that road and see what happens.
Yeah. So what did you end up studying? As kind of like a left field question.
Yeah, no worries, man. So my degree is in political science, right? I had transferred colleges a couple times, and political science with an emphasis, a certificate of study in like international relations and terrorism studies. That's what I ended
Interesting.
up getting my degree in. Yeah.
So why poli sci and terrorism studies?
Dude, it was something that interested me. I think at the time I had some professors that I really liked. I liked law initially,
Okay.
like that kind of interests me, and then I got into some like I took some like elective law classes, and I was like, nope, dude, this is way too much writing and way too much work, dude. Like I do not want to do this. Um, and I think just the timing of everything, man. Like I graduated from high school in 2000, so we're talking right now. We're talking at this time. We're talking like 2003, 2004, if everything was going on. I
Yeah.
was super interested in it, especially like international relations, like all the backstories behind how countries work, the inner dealings, like what you always see on the news isn't always the real reason behind things and all that stuff. It just really interests me.
Interesting. So then kind of stemming from military into, the police into law enforcement, right? Why not go down the route of poli sci and or counterterrorism?
Exactly, dude. That was kind of my thought. Like, hey, this is probably one of the couple routes I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And to be completely honest, like it's one of the routes that got me done the quickest because I had lost some credits transferring schools.
Fair.
So I was like, hey, dude, like I have all my prereqs out of the way. What are the things that transfer over the most, and what are the ways that I can get done? And I had really thought like federal agencies too, like FBI had really interested me. Um, and so I was like, okay, I got to finish my degree. Like that was a deal I had always told myself too. I would get my degree and finish it because that was the thing to do 20 years ago, man. Like you had to have a college degree, right? Like that was kind of the expectation, I guess, or at least it was in my family at that time. So yeah, that was kind of the course that provided the most congruence with what I thought I would end up doing, and also the path of least resistance.
Fair. Fair. I like it. All right. So then as you moved away from the military aspect and started doing these ride-alongs with Phoenix, I mean, what was it about law enforcement that got you excited and kind of felt like home, more or less?
Um, Gosh, man, that's a great question. I think for me, like I had just never, dude, I just never liked bullies, man. Like that's one big thing that have always kind of like been on my head, like growing up. Like, dude, I was a little freaking chunky kid growing up, and had my fair share of like kids messing with me or whatever. And as I got into high school, like I grew quite a bit, started playing ball, put on a lot of weight, a good weight, got in better shape. And I think that had just kind of always stuck with me, and dude, it just sounded fun, man. Like you get a freaking cop car with lights and sirens. You get to go out in the middle of the night, find people doing stuff they shouldn't be doing, and protect people. And yeah, dude, it just sounded like a good option right after some stuff in my plans hadn't worked out. So
Yeah. So I can imagine being a cop in a massive city being pretty intense. I definitely have an understanding of what law enforcement is and does, not in a large city, and kind of what day to day life looks like. For somebody that might be interested in it and maybe relating to you right now, what, I guess, we'll just start with, what did a day in the life look like for you? Maybe on both extremes, the boring, the average, and like an extreme day.
Yeah, dude. So I would say it is, man. Like Phoenix, big city, right? The fifth biggest city in the country. So we're busy, and I went to probably the busiest precinct out of the bat at that time. Is our like southwest west side of Phoenix called Maryvale. So like a normal day, man. I started out on third shift, so I was working 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. Um, going in
That's
at
like busy
nighttime.
season. Yeah.
It's super busy, man. Like we'd hit, and on my days off were Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? So like my Monday is Friday night. Like things are busy, things are cranking off. You get out of you get out of briefing if you have one, if you even have a briefing because stuff's so busy, and you get out there and there's a stack of calls, like 20 calls deep that are holding, and you're like, oh man, dude, here we go, dude. There's a burglary call, a residential burglary call that's been holding for 6 hours because it's a lower priority and other stuff is just coming out, man. Like shooting, stabbings, armed robberies, like active alarm calls, like all this stuff is going on. So it's just those were crazy days, man, crazy times. But I was with a bunch of guys and girls that were pretty similar to me, like similar ages, and dude, it was a blast. Like I think that's probably some of the most fun I've had as a cop. Minus like sleep, I could not sleep during the day. I had a really hard time with that. But dude, it was a blast, man. And then you have a day, maybe like a Sunday or a Monday night, like our last two nights, where things would get quiet. And usually you're trying to catch up from the week, man. You're thankful that you have a little bit of quiet time to catch up on some paperwork or some other stuff to rearrange some of your gear that has just been thrown all over for the last 3 or 4 days and trying to figure things out.
So, what was maybe the most rewarding thing for you?
I do. So for me, I'd say the one of the most rewarding things was just like the interactions with people. Like I think over the past couple of years, man, we see a different side presented a lot about law enforcement and stuff like that. And there's definitely bad stuff that happens, that just like in every career, dude. But I think just the day to day interactions, like you don't know what impact that had or like what ripple effect, man. Like I remember constantly, like especially um, in those times, man, just having conversations with some younger kids and just treating them with respect, dude. Like I think a lot of people don't realize or not empathetic to other situations, right? So like you're responding to a call, this dude's freaking some kid shoplifting something, right? You have a couple options there as a cop, like, hey, is this kid a career criminal that's like hardened, like gonna tell you to freaking go pound sand and hates cops, or is this a kid that's like, dude, like he has no direction at home, if he even has a home, like he's been tossed around, he's had like not an awesome upbringing. Not that these are excuses. I'm just trying to like have some empathy for some people. And he's just like, dude, like this is a way for him to either get attention or to literally get something he needs, right? So I think having that option on those interactions to see people kind of in their worst and be able to talk to them and relate with them. I think that was always super rewarding for me, man. And you'd have the kids that would have nothing to do with it, right? They didn't want to hear a thing from you, but then you'd also have kids that like you start talking to them about their family life or like, hey, dude, what's going on, man? And they just start freaking bawling,
Yeah.
right? And you hear these stories and you're like, gosh, dude, and then they express to you like, hey, man, like no one's asked me these questions in my life ever, like. So I think those things always freaking really were rewarding to me.
Was is being empathetic, and I'm trying to think of how I want to ask this question or exactly what it is I'm trying to ask, but was being empathetic towards those kids and likely people in general something that you had to kind of learn, or was that something that you would step into a situation and could kind of just pick up on based off of body language situation? I mean, was it a learned skill or a known skill for you?
No, I would say it was definitely a learned skill, man. I think, and as I get older, like definitely even more of a learned skill. I think you come to appreciate that stuff a little bit more. And at the time, dude, I would say like when I was first on that, I probably didn't have um, a ton of that, right? Like I think it was you're out of the gate, you're running a bunch of calls, like you're going from an armed robbery to a shooting call to a stabbing call, and now you got to go deal with some like silly shoplifter that's going on. Like you as a 22-year-old dude, like you probably don't have a ton of patience for that as is. I thought
Mhm.
I, of course, like everyone thinks they did okay at the time, right? But it was definitely a learned skill, man. Like something that you had to learn about, and you'd have some older officers talk to you about it. You'd have some that were very much like, "Hey, dude, no, man, that's a crime. This is what we have to do. This is like you have to do this." And then you have some others that would talk and be like, "Hey, man, like um, not everyone has an awesome home life. Not everyone has an awesome upbringing. Not everyone has been taught like how to properly behave in a society, right? And I think learning that and being able to apply that as an officer is huge, man. Like not only for your own mental sanity, just but to help the people that need help.
Yeah. So then that's kind of two different, like the dichotomy is a little bit different, right? Where you've got people that are black and white versus the gray. Oop, microphone. How did you kind of develop your own tact for handling those situations?
Dude, so just from experience, I think just like call volume and understanding people's body language and how they were, and you could tell if dudes or people that you're interacting with, like if they really had a dislike for you, like you knew you weren't going to get through them, like you could tell that I think fairly early in the majority of situations where some you would you would be able to see like, hey man, like this, I know he's putting on this front a little bit, but I think there's something under there that I can try to like pull out of him. I think I can try to maybe talk, and maybe there's a lesson to be learned either on my end or his from this interaction.
Fair, fair. Okay. So then, as part of your career path, right? I know that there's several different routes that you can take. Did you kind of go into law enforcement wanting to just work the beat the whole time, or what did you want to go detective, SWAT, narcotics? I mean, how did you kind of navigate, and where did you end up deciding to go?
Yeah, man. So like I've always been into hunting and shooting, stuff like that, and um, I like competition, the brotherhood. I think that came from sports too. So I knew, and especially doing some of those ride-alongs, like while I was in college, I knew I wanted to go to like a tactical route, like onto a SWAT team. So that like that was my whole goal in getting hired, was to go there as quick as I could. So that was definitely a known plan for me.
Okay. So what did that, I mean, as much as you can tell, because I imagine there's probably some stuff that's not shareable. What did that look like, and how did you kind of navigate both getting there and then also the mental and physical preparation?
Yeah, man. So we had so Phoenix doesn't call it SWAT, right? We call it the Special Assignments Unit. SAU is what it's called here. Um, and they had at the time, man, I was young, right? So I think at the time that I tested, I think the majority of guys that were making it over to SWAT to SAU probably had 8 to 12 years on, and you can test once you have 3 on the department.
Okay.
So that's right. I had just hit my 3 year mark when I took my test. And as far as preparation, man, I took some outside training. I've always been a huge proponent of that. I've never been the guy that's like, hey, the police firearms instructors are going to teach me everything I need to know. Just because I'd watch, right? I'd watch guys like Rob Latham or Jerry Barnhart or um, Benny Cooley shoot. And I'm like, those guys shoot way better than the dudes at my academy. Like, I'm gonna listen to what they have to say. So I would take some outside training and take those classes. So that was one of the ways I prepared. And then fitness has always kind of been a thing for me, um, from athletics and stuff like that. So that was an easy part. Like there were test specific things that I knew was going to be on like our physical fitness test, the standards for the team that I had to work on. But other than that, that was kind of it. And then I just had to know. I knew going into it, like I was battling seniority, right? Because there's points awarded for seniority. So I'm getting you get a point per year. So I'm getting a whopping 1.5 out of 10 points. So I know that I'm down 8.5. So I could not afford to lose stuff in other areas. So I think I just knew those things going into it. And just told myself like, hey man, like why not me? Why not now? Someone's gonna get a spot, so like why can't it be me?
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned competition and shooting. Did you shoot competitively?
I did like not before I was a cop, but like as a cop I did
Okay.
a little bit. Yeah.
So this is one question that is always kind of interesting. Excuse me. Do you feel like shooting competitively helps you in your job?
100%. Yeah. I think
And
if
what
people are, yeah, I think if people say it doesn't, like they're so disconnected. Like anyone that can teach you how to put rounds on target where you want faster, um, is the way to go, dude. Like why would you not listen to that? Like, and I think a lot of people can't separate the whole like tactics part of it. And I think that's just not an issue. Like if you can't separate that yourself as a tactician or as a cop or as a military guy or whatever, if you can't accept the fact that like, hey, this person knows more about this skill, like this specific skill set, like, hey, I'm gonna draw my pistol and I'm gonna shoot um, a Bills drill, right? And I'm gonna do it as fast as I can. If that person performs it better than you, it doesn't matter if he's a cop or not. You should probably ask him how he does it, right? Like if I want if I want to get in better shape, I'm not going to find a cop specifically that's in good shape and only ask him, right? I'm going to find someone that's in good shape and that does it for a life for their job and ask them what they're doing. Like, so it makes no sense to kind of change that philosophy and pick and choose. So yeah, I think for me 100%, man, like competition shooting will 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 increase your abilities on the street 100%.
Yeah. Did you do a lot of USPSA then? I'm assuming.
Yeah, USPSA, some like IPSC style stuff,
Yep.
a lot of steel matches out at out at Rio Salado out in the East Valley has a ton of matches. Like I'd shoot there. Like any chance we would get, like I would try to go out there, almost like if not every week, once a week, and shoot a match.
Yeah. That's actually off topic. There's a range that's down the road that I need to go. Maybe that's what I'll do this afternoon because I want to go get back into it. But one thing you'd mentioned a little bit about was kind of and this is something that's important to me kind of as the podcast itself has progressed and kind of as I've grown up, is the mental health side of stuff.
Yeah.
So kind of in your world, right? You'd mentioned going from, shooting, stabbing, burglary to dealing with a shoplifting kid, right? I can't even imagine kind of what sort of mental toll that takes, but let alone some of the stuff that you've seen. How have you kind of navigated that, handled that, and struggled with it in a way that maybe, has been helpful, harmful, that we can maybe share for others?
Yeah, man. So I think um, early on, like you don't pay much attention to it. I don't think like stuff will bug you. Um, and it becomes the norm. Like you see so much freaking like horrendous stuff, or at least I did. I feel like dude, I remember one of my first calls on FTO. Literally, like my first week, we go to this a hot call, priority one call, right? Like get there right now, bad stuff's happening, a stabbing call, and we show up at this um, at a trailer park, and there's a lady on the ground that's been stabbed. She's obviously not dying, and there's a guy outside. We ended up knowing that they were husband and wife, and he is stabbing himself. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, dude, this is freaking intense. Like, this is crazy. But as a brand new person, like you think of it and you're like, whoa, this is nuts. But I don't think you understand like how it hits you, if
Okay.
that makes sense
Yeah.
initially. And then so you go through a lot of this years and years and years, and you see different things like drownings, child abuse cases, um, the amount of shootings like you'd go on where there's someone in the street that's dead, like, and that was just a normal thing, right? Like that was just it was normal. The majority of police departments like don't really look at that stuff. If you use force, then they'll look into like some mental health stuff, and a lot are getting better about it. But for that stuff, like it's not really, there's no protocol for it, or there wasn't at my department at the time. So I think for me, like, dude, like I would always talk with, I had my wife, man, and like I'm super blessed, dude, to have her because she is an awesome woman that I've always been able to just be an open book with. And like I could talk to her and I could tell her stuff, man. Like I could tell her, hey, like I saw this was shitty, this bugged me, and I wouldn't go into details a lot of times, but like I always had someone to talk to, kind of. But I think later on in my career, I think it starts to add up, right? Like that kind of cumulative effect of just seeing constant bad stuff, or being constantly in bad stuff, or having adrenaline spikes, right? Getting shot at, getting into shootings. Like that's just not a normal thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that cumulative effect, I think, started to bother me a little bit. And I actually ended up going to a counselor, man, and just talking to like an outside removed third party. Um, and I was super mixed on it, because I think it's so hard, dude. And I don't want this to sound shitty, but I think sometimes like the whole um, like PTSD is 100% real, but I think sometimes um, we try to look for problems that maybe aren't there, because we not because we talk about it too much, just because it is so prevalent, right? So I think you have sometimes conversations, and like guys got to understand too, like if it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother you, that's cool, but you got to be honest with yourself about it. Like don't just say it doesn't bother you because you want to sound tough. Like, but if it doesn't bother you, like that's totally fine. Like don't think you have to have something wrong, right? Like don't think you have to go talk to someone just because that's what other people do. Like if stuff bothers you, like get yourself help and fix it. So that's what I did, man. Like we had a hostage rescue scenario that went pretty shitty, um, and some we had a couple kids were involved. I had a teammate get shot, dude, and it was a mess, man. And that incident bugged me pretty bad. And I think finally, like, um, just being aware of it and finally understanding, like, hey, dude, like you're sleeping way less. My wife was super honest with me. Hey, dude, like you're way more irritable than you usually are. So I reached out and went and talked to somebody, and I kept that up for a couple years, even when I was continuing to be a cop, and probably one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Okay. So, like I said, this is kind of the vein of things that I like really am very interested in. So,
Yeah.
maybe to go back to your wife and being an open book to her. So, this is one thing that like I've talked to several folks about. How did you kind of set set the standard for being an open book with your wife in a way that was helpful for you and not harmful for her too?
Yeah, dude. So that's the hard part, right? Is trying to figure out like what to tell her without putting like all these horrible images in her head or making her worry more. So for me, it was just enough, man. Like I think, and it was kind of a trial and error. Like I know that there would be some times when I'd get off shift and I'd come home and I'd start telling a story, and I could see like a change in her face, and I'd be like, okay, that's probably too much, right? And then there's other times when I would tell a story, and she would be like, okay, like what else? Like what made it so bad? Like she would ask questions and having that interaction. So I think again, like reading her body language, understanding that, but then also trying not to be a burden for her, right? Like I don't want to come to her and talk about um, the child abuse case where I just freaking I went to, and I saw a 3-year-old beaten so bad that it's like it was horrible. Like I don't want to put those thoughts in her head, but also letting her know. I think letting your significant other or people that you care about know that those things are stuff that you see and that you go through is super important, man, because I think they have to understand what's happening. And I think that's what doesn't happen a lot of time, is like people won't understand what you're going through, and can't be empathetic, can't be sympathetic, because you don't want to talk about it. So then you're just irritable, then you're just pissy, then you're just upset at the world, and people don't understand why. And for a while, I think that'll be okay. But after a little bit, like it's not going to fly anymore, right? Like you have to choose to make a change.
So that's a good point, right? Helping them be empathetic towards you, not oversharing. And I like that, the trial and error aspect of it, because to your point earlier with a hostage situation, and that ended up being a particular situation that bugged you. How receptive were you? And I'm trying to think again, right? These are all kind of hard questions to ask, right? Is I feel like going to a therapist or a counselor initially is very difficult. right? It's very hard to kind of just accept, hey, I need to go talk, or hey, I have a problem. Because I feel like dudes in general, and I know that guys in law enforcement particularly, right, don't want to go do it because they think they can handle their own shit, which is not bad, but also not good, right? How did she help you kind of get to the point of recognizing, hey, I'm having some issues? Or how did you recognize changes in yourself that lent to getting help?
My wife, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, a little
Or
bit of both, right? So how did
okay.
she help you, and how did you get to the point where you recognized a change in yourself?
Dude, so I know sleep was a big thing for me. Sleep and just thoughts, man. Like I could not get scenarios, outcomes, images out of my head. And that had happened a few times before, but for not for the same length of period or length of time. So I knew like, hey, something's funky here, dude. Like this is bothering me. This is bothering me a little more than other things have, and why. Like I need to figure out why. Um, and then, do like she's just super open with me. My wife is, and we have a very like um, communicate very well. Like we're very open with each other. Like one of our big things with each other is like no matter what happens, like we don't have bad intentions for each other. So if she comes to me and tells me something, even if I don't like hearing it, right? Like she comes to me and says, "Hey, like you're being really short. Like you're not fun to be around right now. Like you've been really, you've been pissy, or you've been angry, or you've been just grumpy like the past week. Like what's the deal?" Like I know that her intentions aren't bad with those questions, even though it may piss me off, right? And be like, "What are you talking about?" I know that her intentions aren't bad. So when she started coming to me and just saying like, "Hey, like I can tell like you're a little short with the kids. You don't want to do stuff. Um, you're just different. Like something's off." And her telling me that, and then also like when I'm real with myself, asking me that same question, knowing that that's true. Like, hey, she's telling me what I'm feeling, right? Like she's verifying my own thoughts and feelings. Like it's time to freaking look into this a little bit more and see. And like you said, man, like cops are not great about this, dude. Like it is. I think the military side of things are way ahead of the game, and as far as the PTS or dealing with stuff or being aware of it. And cops, it's getting better, but it's not looked at the same, I guess, yet or whatnot. So I didn't really know people that had done it, right? So like we had a full time team. At this point, I had been on our team for probably 10 years, I would say. And I really didn't know anyone that had done this. So I'm like, dude, this is kind of awkward. Like everyone else is just dealing with their shit and fine. Like, why are you being a pussy, Justin? Like, what's going on? Why can't you just deal with your stuff? Um, but I think once she confirmed it for me and my thoughts, and for me, like just something with priorities, dude. Like, I love being a cop. I loved it, but like I am husband and father first. Like that is where my priorities lie. So I'm going to make the best decision to keep my marriage right and be a good dad, and that's going to supersede anything that has to do with being a cop. And so like I always try to go back to that on decision making. Like, hey, I can not go see someone and probably be fine as a cop, but I'm going to be hurt in these areas of my life.
Mm,
Where I can go see someone and it's probably going to help these areas of my life, and maybe I'll get some shit at it for work, but it's not going to make me worse of a cop. So like outcomes seem to make sense.
okay. Okay. So maybe before we get into MilMak and knife making, kind of throughout the whole kind of growing up period into law enforcement, through law enforcement, is there anything that you're like, man, I don't feel like I share this a whole lot, or this is super important? This is one of my favorite questions, right? That's super important that I wish I would have known going into all of
Um, for law enforcement specific, or just like life, early stages of life?
it. Both. Let's do
Both.
both.
Okay. Dude, so early stages of life would just be like having realistic expectations of yourself, not like goals, dreams, like, hey, I want to do this thing, or I want to be a SWAT cop, I want to go in the military, I want to play pro football, like dream away, man. Like, but having realistic expectations of yourself as far as what you can and can't handle and what you will and won't do. I think those are the biggest things, man. Like you can't expect perfection out of yourself. For me, that was something I dealt with a lot. Like if I had messed up little, man, like say a football game and I dropped a pass or something happened, like dude, that would eat me up for weeks. Like it would eat me up for the next game, right? As a cop, like something at the end of a scenario or at the end of a job, end of a call, like, hey, I should have done this. Like that would have been a better decision knowing what I know now. And then I would beat myself up over that. So having like being able to manage like self expectations, I think is really, really big in all aspects of things. And then dude, just like I think the biggest thing, like just be freaking nice to yourself, dude. Like your inner talk and your self dialogue is so important. And I know that now more than ever, just from having kids and some of the trainings and stuff that I get into. Like I nerd out on some of that stuff, and understanding how that affects you, man. Like if you constantly tell yourself like just little stuff, like dude, like you did something wrong and you're like, gosh, I suck, man, shit. But you say that to yourself like 20 times a day, like you're gonna start believing that shit.
Yeah.
And it's not good. So like it sounds nerdy and it's not everyone's freaking cup of tea, but like I'm into that stuff. I believe it. Like I think what you feed yourself is gonna grow and be on top of that, man, from as early as you can start, dude. Like one of my favorite phrases is like the best day to plant a tree was yesterday, right? Like so get on it now and understand that that's not gonna that those things are gonna help you out. So
Okay. Okay. Well, as we start talking about MilMak, I mean, how did knives and knife making and MilMak come about?
yeah, dude. So it kind of was all kind of all started from the same thing, man. Like I used to weld a bunch. I used to build like Baja bumpers and roll cages and stuff like that. And then obviously end up becoming a cop, like have kids, like can't have like a big tube bender out in my driveway for the HOA anymore. Um, and dude, I remember like I was on patrol and I wanted a Strider knife. Like I wanted an old like Strider, and that thing was like, I want to say like $500. I'm like, dude, I can't spend that, man. I'm making like $18 an hour. Like I can't spend $500 on a knife. You're crazy. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can make one of these. So just kind of started, and it was also just a way for me to decompress, man. Like I've always been somewhat like artsy, artistic, creative. Like I like doing that stuff. So I'm like, oh, dude, I'll grab some pieces of steel and start filing away. Had a hacksaw, just like old like literally hand hacksaw that I'd cut out a couple shapes with and used some files and made a jig and kind of started from there. And first ones weren't very awesome looking, and started doing it more and more, and saved up some money to buy a grinder and started making some knives and giving them away, and guys liked them, and there it went.
So it started with wanting a Strider. Do you have a Strider knife now?
I do.
Do you?
I do. Yeah.
Good. So did you, that's kind of funny. So did you just start with like tool steel, like picking up old files and wrenches and stuff? And I mean, did you just start grinding them down? Did you start heating them up, forging them out, or just?
Yeah, I do. So I experimented a little with both. Like I didn't have a forge, obviously. So I kind of just started with stock removal. The first knife I made was um, used to be on like a knife forum, and an old bladesmith was like nice enough to send me a piece of 1084, just like a little like 1.5 inch by 7 inch piece, and was like, hey, dude, I saw something you posted. Like, here's a shipping address, and here's a piece to mess with, and so just kind of started doing that. Had some old bandsaw stuff, and I remember like when I was younger, one of my uncles that I hunted with a lot. My dad passed away when I was like 10, but we would go hunting with my dad and my uncle Jim, like super handy with stuff, man. Like lived up in like the White Mountains in Arizona. Had a huge shop. Like I remember when I was young, like making a knife out of a bandsaw with him. Um, and another uncle had helped me make one out of a file. So it was just it was interesting because I'd never put those two things together. And then yeah, I just started doing those things and experimenting. Got into forging a little bit, but again, like working third shift, I get off at 7 in the morning, come home, wasn't an awesome time to like get an anvil out. Anvils were expensive, man. Like I think I started with like a piece of railroad
Yeah.
um, and track, and that was like the first thing I used to try forging. And I bought like a little tiny coffee can forge, and just kind of went from there. And then just kind of started getting into stock removal more and more.
Yeah, it's funny. My dad actually bought a an anvil and a forge as well, and I've tried some of the knife making, but it's not. I don't think I ever tried with tool steel. He did have a bunch of like files and stuff that you could have easily just done the stock removal on, sharpened it up, and polished it, and
Yeah,
made it look all sexy and whatnot. But I tried once with a railroad spike. Those those are hard.
yeah,
I have massive respect for guys that can like hammer that down into something flat.
dude. Like true bladesmiths are crazy, man. Like dude, like Ed Caffrey's one that I used to follow a ton. Like he did some awesome stuff. Um, Obviously Josh Smith is huge now with Montana Knife Company, um, and like his production stuff, but his like handmade stuff, like dude, like that's an art in itself, dude. Like that's crazy respect. I did just join the American Bladesmith Society as like did my initial membership because I want to get back into like trying to forge and learning that stuff a little bit,
Yeah,
just for something different. I think like just to keep it fresh, man. You can only machine and cut out so many knives before it starts becoming just too much of a work and you forgot why you got into it in the first place, you know?
sure. Sure. Yeah, because what's your process now? I mean, are you or is it all like I guess are you're cutting out a shape and then are you doing stock removal and then sharpening? Is that kind of what your process is now?
Yeah, do so somewhat, right? So I have a production line that's built by Dauntless Manufacturing that's in North Carolina that does like
Mhm.
my models but production style. And then I actually I bought a CNC machine here.
Nice.
So I do machine some of my own knives now. But I will use at this point, like everything is pretty much water jet. I'll do a few like one-off customs if I'm trying to do a different shape or something like that. But I'll get a water jetted blank out. I will grind that. I'll drill the holes. I'll heat treat it. I'll put handles on, complete the finishing process, sharpen it up, make sheaths. I do a ton of that stuff like all in house, and I don't have at this point no employees. Like I need one. So if anybody's listening is in the Phoenix area and wants to learn how to make knives, hit me up. But yeah, it's that's the process for mostly for stock removal.
Yeah. Okay. So how did you learn all of this? I mean, I know that you mentioned doing some of it growing up with like as a kid and everything, and I don't, did you say that you just joined or rejoined the Bladesmith Society? I mean, did you go to any classes in schools or was it all YouTube University?
Dude, yeah, a lot of YouTube University. Yeah, I just joined. I had never been a member like of
Okay.
ABS before. But I'm like, dude, it's something I'll try out. Why not? See see what I can change. But yeah, dude, a lot of videos, a lot of like internet forums, man. Like right back back before like YouTube and everything was huge, right? Like you have all the little forums that you could go post on, and Blade forums was one. I was always on there asking questions of guys. I was lucky enough. There was a guy. He was a retired firefighter that was in the Phoenix area that had me over to his shop a couple times and kind of helped me out and showed me some things. But other than that, just trial and error, man. Like just figuring out how to grind a knife out and not catch my garage on fire since there was not a separate shop at that time, and having metal dust and handle dust all over my wife's car. And yeah, just lots and lots of repetition.
Fair. Fair. So then what kind of knives, or I guess what kind of knives are you cranking out now for people that maybe haven't come across you yet? And what's the demographic you're trying to get your knives into their hands?
Dude, yeah. So for Milmac is primarily like self-defense, tactical knives, I guess if you would say, but like weapon knives, right? Like that's primarily what we started at and specialized it in. I started just gearing towards cops and military, but there's a huge other group of guys that like carrying blades for self-defense. And so that's I would say that's the primary demographic for MilMak. And I'm just starting up some other stuff. I'm not just starting. I've been doing it for a little bit, but kind of separating out some of the hunting and fishing and just like general like bushcraft outdoor stuff. And that'll be kind of like officially launching here in about a month, and that'll be called Copper State. knife company, and we'll kind of gear those models towards that.
Nice. Taking a note. Copper State Knife Company. You're gonna
Yeah.
have, is it gonna be part of the MilMak website or new website? People were like, I need a new knife. Because
Yeah, it'll be a new website. It'll be completely separate. Like obviously, yeah, part of the same company, but just a completely separate line knife. So um, surprisingly or not, there's not a lot of there's some people that aren't into weapons as knives as weapons, but love them for like hunting and fishing. So I think it'll be a good little switch for some
yeah,
stuff.
that's cool. So do you already have like designs and everything? Are they all fixed blades? You going for fillet knives, folders, whole kit and caboodle?
Yeah, I'm working on a folder, just
Nice.
like a little friction folder. Like I've always loved, like um, kind of like gentleman's folders, like not as a self defense tool, not as a tactical type knife, but just
Yep.
like, hey, man, I need to take this out and open up a box, or I need to take this out and do these little tasks with it. So I'm working on a friction folder right now. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah. Friction folders are cool. I've never owned one. Yeah, I don't think I've never owned one, but I've seen a lot of videos and they're neat. Like, I don't know. I agree. There's something about them that you're like, you feel a little swanky when you when you
Yeah,
look at it, like the concept of them. That's awesome.
exactly, man. That's what I think I love about them, because they're so old. Like that design, that type is super old, but it's like you can do some nice micarta handles, man. Like make it look very like just cool.
Yeah.
So I'm
Oh yeah.
excited to do that.
I agree. Are you gonna forge those? I mean, like this is like totally random, but like whenever I see pictures and videos of them, you see people do like a cool like Damascus like cleaver style that are like, their little 1 inch blade, and you're like, that serves no purpose other than like a box and like just to be cool.
Yeah. No, I probably like if I do forge stuff, it'll probably just be like teaching myself how to do it really. Like I'm not good enough to forge knives out and sell them right now. Like I don't I wouldn't be like super comfortable with that yet.
Yeah,
So it'll be copper staple will be pretty much like all production style knives.
very cool. Very cool. Well, shoot, man. I know we've talked about kind of a hodgepodge of stuff, and I do want to be respectful of your time, but I do know that you'd mentioned that you do a couple other things. So you've got, like you said, Copper State coming up online. You do some coaching and everything as well. I don't know if you want to cover some of that, or what other things you feel are kind of top of mind or feel like are important to talk about this morning.
No, man. Yeah. Thanks for the option to do it. Yeah, dude, so that's something I'm going to be starting out here also in the next month or so. Um, is a actual like coaching mentoring program. Like that's something I feel like super passionate about. Like talking about what you talked about, and we're asking questions about earlier, just like relaying those life lessons that I've learned, and the trials and tribulations that I've gone through, and how to help people just with their learning curve, man. Help guys understand that like stuff they go through is is not unique to them. Like it is and it's not, right? Like there's plenty of dudes that are in similar situations that have similar mindsets that have to go through those same scenarios, and having a place or a forum that they can come to and they can speak and that they can interact with guys that are similar, I think is huge. And I think being able to have some guidance in that, to help other dudes, like dude, cops are notorious for like working overtime, man. Like, and I got a lot of shit because I did not work a lot of overtime because I was focused on MilMak, right? Like building my own brand, building my own business, and helping other guys that want to do that same thing coming from that line of work. Like, I'm super passionate about that. Like, hey, you have an idea and you want to start it up. Like, here's some steps that I've learned for the past, I don't know, 7, 8 years of actually running MilMak as a business that like can help you, right? Here's some things that I didn't do right, some things I still don't do right, some things I'm working on. But like, dude, there's tons of info and knowledge out there, and I think just being able to to be a resource for people to go and kind of help with all that, I think would be huge.
Yeah. Is that going to fall under the MilMak umbrella as well? Yeah.
It will, yeah.
Okay. So if folks want to check out your knives, all your work, maybe subscribe for your coaching, where are they going to find you?
Yeah. So on Instagram, it's just at MilMak AZ, MilMakAZ, and then at MilMak Blades. And then my website for the blades is milmakaz.com also. So you can find out info there and check some stuff out. And then always just feel free to shoot me a message, man. Like I love having conversations like this, Austin. Like I truly enjoy it. Just sitting down and talking to dudes about stuff, and it's always fun. And I always learn a lot too. So it's good to get asked some questions and actually have to think about what you believe and relay that information. Right.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate it. Maybe one of my favorite questions is, one, is there anything that maybe we haven't covered? Because I feel like there's a lot of life left that we haven't talked about that you're like, man, I don't get asked about this a whole lot. That is very important to me, or that I don't feel like I share a whole lot about, that is, relevant to kind of what we've discussed.
Dude, yeah. So, and this is just me speaking, right? This may not be everyone's bag, but like for me, like my faith, man. Like I am new to it. Dude, me and my daughter got baptized together about a year ago, but it is something that I have always kind of felt called for. I think I lost my dad when I was 10, right? Like unexpected, out of nowhere, I ended up finding him. And that shook me like pretty hard, and I didn't realize how hard that had kind of shook me until I was older. um, and I think coming full circle and coming around and just understanding, like, maybe it's not faith for you, but finding a purpose that, because I truly do think, man, like stuff happens for reasons. You just got to be willing to find it, and you just got to be willing to look, right, and trusting that the things are happening the way they're supposed to be happening if you're doing your part. Like you're out there being a shithead constantly and making horrible choices. Like stuff's happening for a reason, and the reason is you're making bad choices constantly, right? But I think we all go through those hardships, and having that faith for me, in God, knowing that I am on the path that I'm supposed to be on, is comforting, but also, it's like it's a huge drive for me. Like, hey, dude, like where am I supposed to be at the end of this? Like, that's what I want to know. Like, what did God have intended for me in my life? And like, what is the person that I'm supposed to become? And then try to be that person. I think that's huge for me. And I don't talk about it a ton, but I think, for me, that's super personal and just very, very important.
Okay. Justin, once again, man, thanks for taking the time. For everybody listening, I hope you all took some good tidbits of information away. I will link both Justin's Instagram in the episode description, as well as his website. But other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful week, and we will catch you next time.